So here we are about to start work on the last part of the course, Excel for the 99%. What we're going to be doing here is I'm going to be providing you with an opportunity to review a lot of the work that you've done and demonstrate everything that you can do in Excel now. I'm going to give you two different data sets, one relatively small and one relatively large, and in a moment I'm going to explain more about what you'll be doing with these data sets. This first data set is called CDC because it comes from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. It's relatively small in one sense, but if you remember, it's still much bigger than what we were dealing with when we were using the weather data, which was a very small, already summarized data set. This data set is not summarized yet. Every row is a different individual, and they all have an ID number to help us keep them straight. But that means that you'll need to do some summaries using pivot charts or pivot tables, for example, or maybe even using functions to average across groups. There are multiple ways that you can answer the questions I'm going to be asking you in the future, and thinking about different tools for different kinds of questions is the point here. As you can see, we also have different variable types. We have some variables like age, which is clearly a numerical variable and can range anywhere from very young to very old, measured in years. We also have other kinds of variables like category variables, whether someone has a health plan, which is simply yes or no. And then we have a category variable that seems to have multiple categories, more than two, this general health variable. After I show you this data set and the next one, you'll have an opportunity to look at a table which describes all these variables so you can understand a little bit more about what is being presented here. These data come from an annual survey that the U.S. Centers for Disease Control does, a behavioral health survey. So there's some really great opportunity here to think about how you can apply the skills you're learning in Excel to real life contexts. Now that I've shown you this one data set, the CDC data set, I'm going to show you the other data set that you'll be using as part of this wrap-up assignment as well. This second data set, NHANES, is another CDC survey-based data set. It's a national health and nutrition survey that the CDC conducts. You can see in this data set we actually have a lot more variables, and this continues to scroll to the right so you can go on and look at additional variables other than the ones I'm showing you here. Once again, we see that we have an identification variable, which is always a good thing. We have categorical variables, and this time we see some more socially oriented variables. Marital status, level of education, whether people are working or not. And then again, we also have some numerical variables like somebody's pulse. And so we have a combination of social variables and health variables and some economic and education variables as well. The point of this larger data set is to give you a much more realistic opportunity to apply the skills you've learned. I'm going to ask you to develop some of your own questions that you can ask with this data set, and then attempt to answer them using the tools you've learned. Something else about this data set that's very realistic is you see here in this pulse category, we actually have some missing data points. We have some NAs. So these may be something that you want to address somehow in your analysis. Maybe you want to filter those out to make sure that you're not presenting missing data. That's something that you can do as well. And it makes this a much more realistic assignment. For both of these data sets, I'm going to give you the opportunity to explore them, and then you'll be asked a series of specific questions to test and assess your skills summarizing large data sets. And remember, even though this NHANES data set is larger than any data set that we've worked with in this course before, you still can summarize it using the same skills that you've been using all course long. So don't be intimidated. Think about the strategies and skills you've used before and apply those same tools to this data set, and I know that you're going to do great. And after that, you'll be finished with this course, and you will have successfully completed Excel for the 99%.